really good to catch up with you after a little while. But your book, I absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
The name, though, is so catchy. That's what's really brilliant about it. And you get it and you go, 30,000 bottles of wine and a pig called Helga.
What the hell's that about?
Yeah, like, how do you put wine and Helga? This has got to be good. I like this one. I loved it because the main thing I loved about it is that you were corporate, high up corporate, and that you both just broke those shackles and you left it. Now, that's not an easy thing to do.
No.
And I'm sure that, and I did read the book, so I know that you did struggle and everything, and it's out there for the public to read. But I mean, when you came to this property, it was not in the price range that you wanted to purchase it, but you knew.
So I'd been looking at it online. So we went on just a brief background, we went on a holiday to the Barossa Valley.
Yeah.
And it made us think maybe there's a life other than corporate and city that might appeal to us. And it took us from that holiday 3 years to find this property.
Yeah.
So we probably looked, including online and in the flesh, at maybe 50 or 100 properties.
Wow.
And this was one.
Yeah.
And it just had beautiful photography.
It does.
It showed the olives and the view behind us and the dams, but no internals of the house or anything. So it was a very strange listing.
Yeah.
But I just kept looking at it and I just kept thinking, I've got to go and see this property.
Yeah.
It was way out of our price range. And then it came down a little bit in price.
Yeah.
And I said to my partner, Jeff, I think it's coming down enough, I might put it off or find out what really is the base offer. And the agent went, no way are you anywhere near this price. So I got over it again, kept looking at other properties, and it came down a little bit more. So in all this time, we hadn't set foot on the property. I just kept looking at the photos.
Only seen it in the photos?
Only
wow,
the photos.
okay.
We hadn't even driven past. We'd been to the Hunter Valley maybe 8 times and not come anywhere near it.
Okay.
And I guess that's because I'm a bit of a realist as
So
well.
because it was out of your range, you went, I don't want to go see it because I want it.
Yeah, and
okay.
you know, Jeff's quite a financial pragmatist, which means he's a pessimist.
Yeah.
So he's like, don't go there, stop looking,
Yeah.
get over it, move on, we'll find somewhere else. And then it came down still over our budget, but really teasingly close.
Yeah.
And we were having lunch one day looking at all these other properties that in my heart I was like, nah, it's not going to work. It's not what I want to leave the city for. And I said to Jeff at this lunch, let's just drive past. Let's just get a feel for it. And if I don't like it, then you can stop hearing me going, I want it, I want it, I want it. And so we drove up to the property and down at the cul-de-sac where you just were, the gate was closed. And we wound down the windows of the car, turned the car off and just sat and heard noises like this and saw the 500 olive trees. And I just knew without setting foot, in my heart, I knew that I absolutely was going to be living on this property.
That's amazing.
Even though it was too expensive.
Yeah.
And so I, again, didn't want to look at the pessimist next to me. So I went, okay, I'm going to keep my cards to my chest because I don't want to influence him in any way. And then I looked at Jeff and he went, if you don't get us this property. And the rest is history. A lot of negotiating. And again, as soon as I stepped foot on this property, for me personally, I went, I don't want to live anywhere else.
But the thing is that you stepped on to the property, you did get it, so therefore, and with my way of thinking of how I look at things, we create what we want, and subconsciously we create it, and people don't realise how strong that is. And you were in that pathway, so there was nothing that was going to tilt you. Really,
no, I don't think so. I mean, you know, this whole tree change, like you said at the beginning, how terrifying it was to leave the corporate world. Neither Jeff or I had done anything like this. We had a 3x3 metre courtyard with a few pot plants. They were usually dead. I'd never been anywhere near a farm really. And I just had this vision that if we were going to leave all that behind, it had to be like Maggie Beer's farm in the Barossa Valley.
Yes.
And I'd been there with Jeff and our best mates, and there was something magical and transporting about that place. It took me away from life.
Yes.
And I just knew that until I found a property that was going to do that for Jeff and I.
So when you got the property, you had all the vines, right? Now you weren't actually intending on doing that.
Definitely
right?
not.
But you've got award-winning wines.
Yeah.
So I mean, you go from corporate, you got a couple of pot plants that you kill on the balcony. High five to you.
Yeah,
right? And then you come here and you go, oh, okay, what I'm going to do with the vines? And then you make wine?
Yeah, we were going to bulldoze the lot.
Yeah, I know.
We were even going to bulldoze all these olives behind us, not thinking or realising how expensive that would have been in itself. But the very night we moved in, it was just Jeff and I down at the house. We're looking out at this view on our balcony. And Brokenwood, quite a famous Hunter Valley winery, had purchased these grapes in 2006 and made a wine from it. So we thought, how romantic, we'll get a bottle of that 6 years later and sit on our deck and overlook the property and share this bottle of wine. And we did that the night we moved in, and maybe it was the whole excitement of the tree change, but we took one sip of it and it was the most delicious wine that I had tasted, and Jeff was just like, oh my God. And I looked at him and I went, oh shit, we're going to be farmers now, aren't we? And his famous words were, well, how hard could that be?
Yeah.
And we loved wine a lot.
Yeah.
And we knew the difference between crap wine and good wine. And it kind of, like, I had literally no desire to grow grapes and make wine. And even when we looked at the property, that was like, no, it's not going to happen.
But interesting, right? So let's say that the subconscious mind, you went to the Barossa Valley wines.
Yeah.
Right, but you had never going to do it.
Yeah.
And maybe that little thing was in there.
Yeah.
And it was just itching, and it was just,
Yeah, and I mentioned how many properties we looked at.
Yeah.
That was all over Australia.
Oh, okay.
So we weren't tied to the Hunter. We weren't tied to a wine region. It was going to be accommodation. That was our main focus.
Yeah.
So there needed to be tourism. So we looked at beaches and hinterlands and you name it, the Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
But it just kept coming back to the Hunter Valley. And so, maybe there was that subconscious that between, our skills and our determination to succeed, we
But
would
see,
make
that's the
great
thing.
wine.
It's what people don't realise, that when they get caught in the corporate world or in the world of the city and suburbs and all that, and they're stressed like anything. They've got so much finance problems and the problems that that they do stress, even just work pressures. But they don't realise that you can change, and you don't have to be 15, 25 or something to make those changes. That it's possible to do it, and you've been...
Well, that's exactly what we felt, because we were nearly 40 when this opportunity came up, and even then we were like, aren't we too old for this? But we'd seen other people move to the Hunter in their 50s and 60s and we're making a go of it, and we thought, well, we're younger than that and we're still relatively healthy and fit, so if we don't give it a shot now, then we'll never know whether we can do it. So that's why...
But, I mean, as you said, you've seen people that have done that in their 50s and their 60s too. So, I mean, you're looking at a great big scope of age there where people can actually you've just got to have that want, haven't you, really?
Yeah, that's the key. You have to have reached a point in your life, whether that's city or something else, where you go, actually, I'm not satisfied with this anymore. That starts planting the seed, but then you need to push through these barriers that you create for yourself. Well, what about our mortgage? Well, what about my job? What about the career I've been working on for 20 years? And for us, it helped that we were both in the same frame of mind.
Yes.
And so we're egging each other on. Well, your job, etc., etc. But if we do this, so that really helped. I think I would never have done it on my own to such a scale. Probably not. But having someone there, knowing that they were going to support you every step of the way and felt the same.
And that's interesting, because like when you look at it, you've worked for all the time you did and you've got to where you did in your corporate world. What would have been the expansion from that point on for you in the corporate world?
I couldn't see that future.
No, you see, whereas this has got, like, it's never ending really, isn't it?
Where it's constantly new ideas, and let's try this and let's try that and let's adjust this, and it's constant.
So you got the wine going, and now you've got the accommodation going as well.
Drive the bus, rescue animals, make oil, make marmalades.
But see, that's what I'm saying. And when we were standing up here earlier, you said, this is a lovely spot overlooking all the Barrington Tops and everything there. And you were thinking of building a house there, but you may not now. But the thing is, you've got constant ideas and you're growing and you're constantly feeding it. Whereas if you were in corporate world, you would have really been choking, wouldn't you?
Totally. And as I said, I had no vision for where I was going to end up in the corporate world. And the job that I was in, I had been in the same company for over 12 years.
Right.
And I was stale. And I knew that I wasn't kind of developing my own skills or trying to expand my knowledge base. And I'd been there for so long that it was a dead-end road. And I kind of got a sense of that. And rather than start in a whole new job in a whole new company, it was just like, that's not going to fulfill me. We need to do something outside the corporate world. So
how did you get to that name of the 30,000 bottles of wine and a pig called Helga?
As I wrote the book, I had no idea what it was called. I just called it the Block 8 book because our property is called Block 8. And then the publisher, her name's Roberta, an awesome publisher at Simon Schuster, and she said to me, what's the title? And I said, I don't know. And she said, you must have ideas. And I sent her about 8 ideas.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be a catchy and lengthy title with a nice subtitle. So between the 8, they were all a mix. She said, I like this, this, and this. So she actually put the 3 together, 30,000 bottles of wine, pig called Helga, not so perfect tree change. And she said, what do you think of this? And as soon as she said it, and I've lost count of the number of people who have said, that title caught my attention. Journalists have said that's the best title of a book I've ever seen, and it just was the perfect synergy for the book, and coming at this time, because I think people are looking for a change in life.
I think you're right there. I think what they're looking for is actually validation.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is why it's particularly important that people like yourselves that have done this, that your story gets out there. And I believe it's like, well, as you know, I speak for Beyond Blue, and I'm there because I've gone through the battle to get to there, and there's that little bit of light.
Yeah.
Well, you're that light for people that go, oh my God, maybe we could do that.
Yeah, and
you know, these 2 guys did it. They didn't know how to do it. But oh my God, they got wines and, you know.
And I'm always very careful to say, you don't have to buy 100 acres and take on grapes and olives and accommodation. Whatever floats your boat. This just happens to have floated ours. But one of the reasons I wrote the book was to inspire people, but also to show that there's going to be 100 ups and downs throughout that whole journey. And as long as you take a breath and laugh at yourself and laugh at your mistakes as well as learning from them, you'll get through it. And I think a lot of people take it all way too seriously. And it's like, we have stuffed up countless times, and we detail a lot of that in the book, and that's okay. That's all just part of where you're getting to.
But it is what it is, and the thing is, it is where you're getting to, but they're lessons. They're just lessons, and what you get out of it is so much self-empowerment. Like for the 2 of you now, I'm sure to be able to walk up here, even if you don't do it too often, to look over that scenery and to have your animals down there, all of this here, and to say, how long ago was it?
7 years.
7 years ago. That's not much time.
No, and it's gone really quickly. And it's occasionally we'll just say to each other, let's take a step back and look at what we've achieved in 7 years. To everyone else, we're dynamos and we've just done amazingly. All we see is how much more we want to do. So there's that kind of dichotomy of, yes, we've done a lot, but there's still more. But every once in a while we'll go, actually, in 7 years, this is incredible. These are 2 boys that literally knew none of this.
They're 2 sea boys.
None of this.
I think it's absolutely marvellous, and I appreciate your time to do.
So here she is. This is the one who started it all, well, the book at least.
Yes.
This is Helga.
This is Helga.
She's now over 2, so she's probably about 120 kilos. She's not quite as little as she was when we first got her.
Yes.
But she's still my baby, and she still loves kisses.
Oh, yes. She'll let me do this too.
Yeah, she's a sucker.
Hello.
Just love affection.
Does this mean I'm accepted, Todd?
Yeah, it sure does.
Right.
There's no raised hairs on the back of her neck, so she's uneasy. Those hairs will go up, and she'll make this kind of barking noise if she's really uneasy. So looks like you've been accepted.
So I've got.
You can move in with the rest of them now. That's Winston. He's the guy who followed me home.
Yes, I
He
remember
loves
that.
people.
Yes.
So he's really makes a really strong connection with a lot of people.
And they don't ever get their horns caught in anything?
No.
They're so good, aren't they?
Sometimes Jeff's legs, but you know, that's just playing.
Yeah.
No, they've all learnt their environment, and they've learnt their place in the hierarchy. Helga's the boss.
So does Helga know how important she is?
I think she does.
She knows she's famous?
I think she does,
Right.
you know. Like, a lot of people come and visit her.
Yeah.
A lot of people
I
say,
could imagine
you know,
that.
they come to the property and I'll run out with my book signing pen going, hey, and they'll be like, where's the pig? So I send them down here, and so she does get a lot of visitors. But I don't think she realises she's in every single bookshop in Australia.
Oh, okay.
And was in a lot of windows.
So I could actually jump in and be her manager for her?
Yeah, you could actually.
Okay, that might be a job I could
What's your
do.
percentage?
I'll let you know that later.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is their lovely little
Yeah, it's
environment that we
wonderful.
built for them, so they're really well looked after.
Yeah. And so much land you have just fenced off for them here.
It's
just
about
for
an
this.
acre. It's dog and wild dog and fox proof.
Yeah.
We just figured if they're going to have a home, it needs to be safe.
Yes.
Lots of grass.
Yeah.
Yeah. See? Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Lots of
She's
grass, and that's Helga's dam.
Yeah.
There, and I don't know if Jeff you can see, but that's her 3-bedroom terrace that sometimes she chooses to share with the goats.
Yes. That's
So yeah,
lovely.
I think maybe she knows she's a diva. Hey?
A special one.
Yeah. So all of this is organic. I don't use any chemicals whatsoever. And the nets are to keep our birds off.
Right.
They come and eat everything.
Yeah.
And rabbits come in as well. But this is just, and I don't really even water this that often.
Oh, okay.
It's just a nice shaded natural environment. And if you don't eat this, my goats will. So you might as well take it home.
No,
for dinner.
we'll eat it. Don't worry about that.
Is that enough? Do you want more?
No, that's wonderful. That's excellent.
Look at that. You want some carrots?
So these are carrots,
Yeah.
are they? Wonderful. And so do you do it in a rotation way or?
No, I should, but I just go, okay, winter's here, winter's now over, so I'll strip out all of this,
Yes.
and then I'll replant all of it with spring stuff. I mean, the spinach is perpetual, it just keeps going.
Yes, it does.
The tomatoes keep popping up.
Right.
So if anything is perpetual, I'll leave it.
Yeah.
But then I'll just strip the whole thing and start from
And
scratch each season.
how do you go with frost here?
Not a problem. I think this winter we had one frost.
Right, okay.
So it's fine.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, I've never seen Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
That's how they do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Aren't they lovely? I haven't been in here for weeks.
Yeah.
Got a few bugs on them. See, that's one of the drawbacks. But
Yeah. So do you do companion planting?
Sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
still a novice. I mean, we've been here 7 years, but I still make mistakes. And look, the birds have eaten all of this through the net. But I just, if I get a good crop, I get a good crop. But for me, it's hours in the garden and it's escaping from life for a while.
So, wow, look at that. That is amazing.
And
Wonderful.
tastes incredible. Have you ever had raw beetroot?
No.
Oh, it's like earthy and meaty. And,
Really?
Yeah, it's really delicious.
Okay, I'll have to try
Maybe
that.
carpaccio it tonight with a bit of lemon juice, a bit of garlic.
Yum.
I'll give you 2 at least. So how many of you are there?
It'll only be my daughter and myself.
Oh, well there you go.
There you go. Isn't
Look
that
at
wonderful?
those. And see, I haven't touched these.
Yeah.
They were planted 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And then when we're ready for it.
Oh, God, that's
and
wonderful.
you can eat the greens too.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, you can. You can
Yeah.
steam them.
Yep.
But yeah, do whatever you like. I'll roast these actually.
Yeah.
Roast these with salmon.
I roast mine too. I
Yeah,
love them
I
roasted.
love.
And then I have them cold and I put a bit of feta cheese over or something like that.
Nice.
Olive oil.
I pickle them. You know, if we've got too many,
Sprinkle
I'll
of
come in
chilli.
and pickle them. Chili, you have to have chili, don't you?
Yes. Just put your mind to that thing. Okay, how resourceful can I be, and what can I make this into?
Yeah.
And I look at things sometimes and I think, don't ever think you don't have enough to eat, because you actually do. If you went into your pantry or you went into your veggie patch and you pulled it out, you'd have an amazing amount of food.
You know, I've got this little obsession with emptying glass containers in the fridge. If there's this much left, I have to see them empty.
Yes.
So sometimes for dinner I'll go in and I'll go, all right, if I use these 10 things, I can clear out the 10 jars. I love doing that. It's one of my little crazy obsessions.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
One thing I made in 14-year relationship, Jeff hated. So
Oh, there you go. That's pretty good.
one thing.